At 26, Ethan Cruz had already heard no more times than most people hear hello. Music was his dream, but every door slammed shut, until one cruel comment from an industry legend crushed him completely. Kid, Elvis was younger than you when he made history. You're too old for this business. Ethan almost quit that night, but something deep inside whispered, one more chance. Little did he know that one chance would leave Simon Cowell speechless and inspire millions around the world. The soft hum of an old ceiling fan echoed through the small room as Ethan Cruz sat by his window, guitar resting on his lap, eyes lost in the distance. Outside, the Tennessee sky was turning gold, the kind of sunset that made dreams feel almost possible again. But tonight, the weight of disappointment felt heavier than the air around him. He was 26, not old by any measure of life, but in the cutthroat world of music, where youth was currency, Ethan felt ancient. For years he had chased the dream. Open mics, county fairs, street corners. He sang until his voice went hoarse, played until his fingers bled. Every note carried the same hope, that maybe someone would notice. His mother, Grace, had been his only audience for years. She worked long hours as a waitress, saving every extra dollar to buy him his first used guitar. She used to tell him, "Baby, God doesn't put music in your heart for nothing. Someday the world will hear you sing." But she was gone now, taken too soon by illness, and her words were all he had left. That afternoon, Ethan had met with a man who once managed one of Elvis Presley's backup singers. It was supposed to be his big break. He had rehearsed for weeks, wearing his best shirt, his mother's locket tucked close to his chest. But when he finished his song, the man leaned back, sighed, and said, "Kid, Elvis was younger than you when he made history. You've missed your window. You're too old for this business." The words hit like a punch to the chest. Too old at 26? Ethan forced a polite smile, shook the man's hand, and walked out. But by the time he reached the street, the smile had fallen away. The rain came without warning. Light at first, then steady. He didn't run for shelter. He just walked, guitar case in hand, letting the water mix with the tears he was too proud to cry. Every drop felt like a whisper from the universe telling him to give up, to be realistic, to grow up and find a real job. By the time he reached home, his boots were soaked and his heart was numb. He placed his guitar against the wall and sank to his knees. For a moment, he thought of selling it. Maybe that would help pay the rent for one more month. But then his eyes fell on the framed photo of his mother, smiling, holding that same guitar the day she gave it to him. Her handwriting on the frame read, "Never stop singing, Ethan. The world needs your song." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Something stirred inside him, fragile but fierce. Maybe the world hadn't heard his voice yet, but that didn't mean it never would. Wiping his tears, Ethan whispered to the photo, "For you, Mom. I'll try one more time." And in that quiet room, hope began to hum again. The morning of the audition arrived with a mix of nerves and disbelief. Ethan stood in front of his bathroom mirror, trying to steady his shaking hands. His reflection looked tired, dark circles beneath hopeful eyes, a worn-out jacket that had seen better days, and a small silver locket resting against his chest. Inside was a faded photo of his mother. He touched it gently and whispered, "This one's for you. Mom, just one more shot." The America's Got Talent stage had always seemed like another world, a place for stars, not for a small-town singer who'd spent the last few years washing dishes and singing at roadside diners. But something deep within him had refused to quit. So he filled out the form, bought a one-way bus ticket to Los Angeles, and told himself that maybe, just maybe, this was destiny. When he arrived at the venue, the air buzzed with energy. Hopefuls of every kind filled the hallways. Dancers stretching, magicians practicing, kids with glitter in their hair, rehearsing songs into their phones. Ethan, holding his old guitar case, looked painfully out of place. He overheard a couple of younger contestants whispering and laughing. Is he a contestant or someone's dad? He smiled faintly and kept walking. Backstage, a producer with a clipboard smiled kindly and asked, "Nervous?" Ethan chuckled softly. "More than I've ever been." "Good," she said. "That means it still matters." Minutes later, as the curtain lifted, the world fell silent. The bright lights hit his face like the sun, and for a heartbeat he forgot how to breathe. Before him stood the judges, Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel, their expressions unreadable. The crowd stretched endlessly into the darkness, waiting. Simon leaned forward, pen in hand. "So tell us your name and why you're here." Ethan took a slow breath, gripping the microphone. "My name is Ethan Cruz," he said. "I'm 26 years old from Tennessee. I'm here because, well, I've lost a lot, but I still believe music can heal people, maybe even me." Simon raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think you can win this?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I've already lost everything else trying." The audience fell silent. Then the first soft notes of his guitar filled the air. "Can't Help Falling in Love" by Elvis Presley. His voice trembled on the first line, but not from fear, from emotion. It carried warmth, pain, and sincerity, like a man singing his truth for the first time. Halfway through, something magical happened. The audience leaned in closer, drawn to the raw honesty in his tone. By the final chorus, the entire hall was on its feet, clapping in rhythm, tears shining in unexpected eyes. When the music ended, there was silence, and the kind that speaks louder than applause. Simon looked stunned. He leaned into his mic, his voice softer than usual. "You know, they told Elvis's manager he was wrong once, and they're wrong again today." Then, without another word, Simon reached forward and hit the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down as Ethan dropped to his knees, clutching his locket, whispering through tears, "We did it, Mom." And in that moment, his dream, the one everyone said was too old to chase, finally began to shine. The world had just witnessed something unforgettable. Golden confetti rained down like a blessing, glimmering against the stage lights as Ethan Cruz stood frozen in disbelief. His hands trembled over his heart, his eyes glistening beneath the shower of gold. The crowd's roar thundered through the theater, a mix of awe, tears, and pure joy. For a man who had once been told he was too old, that he'd missed his window, this moment felt like the universe rewriting his story in real time. Simon Cowell stood, clapping slowly, shaking his head with that rare, speechless smile he reserved for the extraordinary. Heidi Klum wiped her tears. Sofia Vergara covered her mouth in awe. Even Howie Mandel, usually full of quips, was silent, and that silence meant more than 1,000 compliments ever could. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He looked up, the stage lights blurring with tears. Into the microphone he whispered, "This one was for you, Mom. You told me never to stop singing." The camera zoomed in as he raised his eyes toward the sky, confetti falling softly around him like golden snow. That image, raw, humble, and drenched in gratitude, would soon circle the globe. Within hours, clips of his performance were everywhere. Social media exploded. "Who is this guy? I haven't cried like this in years." Proof that it's never too late to follow your dreams. Millions watched, shared, and commented. Ethan Cruz became a symbol, not of fame, but of faith restored. People who had given up on their dreams began posting videos of themselves trying again. Parents showed their kids his performance, saying, "Look, this is what believing in yourself looks like." But behind all the newfound fame, Ethan stayed grounded. In the quiet of his small hotel room that night, he sat on the edge of the bed scrolling through thousands of messages. There were letters from strangers, single moms, retired veterans, struggling artists, all saying the same thing. "You made me believe again." He set his phone down, hands trembling, overwhelmed by emotion. He thought back to that rainy night, the cruel words that almost ended it all, and realized something profound. The world doesn't decide when your time is over. You do. That night, Ethan called it the miracle stage, because what happened wasn't just an audition. It was a moment of awakening. A moment that reminded the world that talent doesn't come with an expiration date, and that hope can bloom again, even in the darkest soil. When Simon later spoke about Ethan in an interview, he said, every few years someone walks onto that stage and changes what this show means. Ethan Cruz didn't just sing, he healed something in all of us, and that quote, simple, powerful, and true, became the headline that traveled across every platform, from a forgotten dreamer to a global inspiration. Ethan's song had become a movement. The golden buzzer had changed Ethan Cruz's life in an instant. But the real transformation came afterward, not from fame, but from the people whose lives he touched with his music and story. After the audition aired, messages flooded in from around the world. Emails, social media posts, and letters arrived daily. People shared their struggles, their disappointments, their fears that they had missed their window in life. And time again they said the same thing. You gave me hope. I thought I was too late, until I saw you. Ethan read every message. Some brought tears to his eyes. Others left him speechless. He realized that his voice, once just a dream trapped in a small Tennessee town, had become a bridge. A bridge that connected hearts across oceans, ages, and walks of life. Instead of immediately signing record deals or chasing record-breaking contracts, Ethan chose a different path. He began performing in hospitals, schools, and small community centers, anywhere that would allow him to reach someone who felt invisible or forgotten. He remembered how his mother had encouraged him to sing not for glory, but to touch hearts, to heal pain, to inspire courage. And so he did. In a children's hospital in Los Angeles, Ethan performed in a softly lit room, his guitar reverberating gently against the walls. Children clutched his hands, their parents weeping quietly. One boy, no older than 8, whispered, "I thought I was too small to do anything, but you made me feel like I can be big." Ethan smiled, crouched down, and said, "You're never too small. And you're never too late." It wasn't just children. Elderly people who had lost spouses or dreams approached him, sharing how his story reminded them that life's opportunities aren't determined by age but by courage. Struggling artists who had abandoned their passions wrote to thank him for showing them that perseverance and belief in oneself could still change everything. His performances, humble and genuine, became viral moments not because of his fame, but because of the humanity behind them. Each song carried a message. Kindness, hope, and courage are the things that never expire. Through this journey, Ethan learned a lesson more profound than any record deal or trophy could offer. The true power of success isn't in being recognized by the world. It's in lifting others up, inspiring them to believe in themselves and leaving a trail of hope wherever you go. By the end of the year, Ethan had performed in over 50 small venues and hospitals. Each stage, each room, each audience was a reminder that dreams could be contagious, that one act of courage, one note sung from the heart, could ripple across the world and touch thousands. And as he looked out at the crowd during one of his charity concerts, Ethan felt something he had never experienced before. A connection so real, so alive that he realized the golden buzzer wasn't just about him, it was about every heart waiting for hope, every soul craving inspiration, and every person who had been told, "It's too late." And for Ethan Cruz, it was never too late, and it never would be. Months had passed since Ethan Cruz first stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage. The golden buzzer had changed his life, but it was the ripple effect of his music, the lives he touched, the hope he inspired, that mattered most to him now. It was a cool autumn evening when Ethan arrived at a charity concert held in a grand auditorium. Families, children, elderly couples, and aspiring artists filled the seats, waiting for the performer who had become a symbol of resilience and hope. As he stood behind the curtain, guitar in hand, Ethan took a deep breath and felt the familiar flutter of nerves. The same feeling that had accompanied him at every audition, every small performance, every hospital stage. But this time it was different. This time it was electric, full of anticipation, full of meaning. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. Ethan stepped forward, the spotlight following him. Every face he saw reflected the same curiosity, the same expectation, the same hunger for a story that could heal. He strummed the first gentle chords of his guitar, and the room leaned in, collectively holding its breath. As he began to sing, Ethan dedicated the song to every person who had ever been told they were too late, too small, or not enough. His voice, rich and tender, carried not just melody but a message of hope. With every note he painted a story of courage, of dreams reclaimed, of kindness spreading like wildfire. Children whispered to their parents, tears glistening in their eyes. Elderly couples held hands tightly, some nodding in quiet agreement, moved by the beauty and sincerity of the performance. Young artists, struggling to believe in themselves, felt a spark ignite within, a spark that said, "It's never too late to try again." As the song reached its crescendo, the crowd joined in. Voices blended, harmonizing, creating a wave of sound that felt bigger than the hall, bigger than any stage Ethan had ever known. He looked out over the audience, his eyes glistening with tears. In that moment, it wasn't about him. It was about every heart in that room, every soul that had ever doubted itself, every person who had been afraid to dream. When the final note faded, the room erupted. But it wasn't just applause. It was something deeper, more profound. It was recognition, gratitude, connection. Simon Cowell, who had flown in to support the event, leaned forward, visibly moved, and said softly, "Ethan Cruz doesn't just sing, he reminds us all of what it means to believe." Ethan knelt on the stage, holding his mother's locket close, whispering a quiet, heartfelt thank you. He knew that her spirit had guided him every step of the way. Every rejection, every hardship, every tear had led to this moment. That night, the story of Ethan Cruz became more than a viral performance. It became a movement. A reminder that kindness, perseverance, and courage can create ripples far beyond what we imagine. As he walked off the stage, Ethan smiled, knowing one thing with certainty: dreams don't have expiration dates, and acts of compassion can transform the world. And somewhere in the crowd, a little girl whispered to her mother, "I want to sing like him someday." And in that instant, Ethan realized that the ripple had just begun.